Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Midnight Bonus. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They all were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon and please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with tonight's Midnight Bonus, shall we? Today's first part of the upload, I'm going to try to share this with as little dramatic flair as possible because it seems like people sometimes get carried away with the storytelling when reporting something like this. And I want to avoid all of that if I can. This happened a long time ago, not even in America, but for the first time the other day. I was just discussing it and suddenly realized that it actually involves three of the major factors associated with a lot of these 411 cases. A body of water, an animal behaving extremely unusual, and a large amount of granite. I was in my mid-teens at the time, and due to unusual circumstances, my dad had woken me up in the middle of the night to walk the dog with him and have a little chat. It was around 2 a.m. It was a full moon and a very bright night with great visibility. The skies were clear, and we were walking on a granite hill. An extinct volcano, in fact. That has a valley in the middle with a loch-in, a small lake. We had walked the dog around the loch-in before starting up the side of the valley towards the ridge with the dog on the leash. As we began to approach the top of the slope, the dog stopped dead, point blank refused to go any further in the direction we were walking. He was literally dead weight on a leash, and we would have had to drag his body to move him any further. We realized he had tucked his tail between his legs, was visibly shaken, and was in a curled crouch, making himself as small as possible. He was also entirely fixated on something ahead of us that we hadn't noticed or paid attention to beforehand. It appeared to be a straight black line emerging vertically from the ground. I remember thinking at first that it was a plastic tube used to protect vulnerable saplings from deer. Because in the first moments we became aware of it, there was no discernible features whatsoever other than the black vertical bar. As we watched, the straight black bar unfurled into a crude shape of a humanoid. I estimate it to have been around 8 feet tall. Unfurled is the best term I can think of to describe this process. If you've ever seen a butterfly emerge from the chrysalis, it was something like that. The figure was entirely jet black. There was no visible features or contrast within any degree despite the bright moonlight, and black doesn't cover how dark this thing actually was. It was what I imagine a black hole may look like, and although the figure itself wasn't remotely transparent or insubstantial, the outline was slightly fuzzy or blurred, almost like something's vibrating extremely quickly, or a washing machine on high spin cycle. It didn't have any human proportions. It was almost like a child's drawing of a stick man, but with disproportionately long arms and legs. If you are imagining something like a stick insect made out of the material Vanta black, and in the rough shape of a person, you are close to the mark. The head was unusually small, and I remember the top of the head being somewhat flat, although my dad does not. In every other aspect, our recollections of the event are identical. This all happened probably within under a minute. Then it turned to face us. I'm not going to give any melodramatic description, and the fact words can't do this justice. Although it lacked any features whatsoever that may be identifiable as eyes or a face, you could feel this thing's attention on you. Instantly, every hair on my body stood erect, and I broke out in goosebumps. I turned to my dad and said, "Dad, what the hell is this thing?" He's one of the most skeptical and level-headed people I know. So what really freaked me out was his answer. "I don't know, we just need to get out of here and right now." And as a young man, being able to detect genuine fear in my dad's voice, it was quite unsettling. We immediately began to walk sideways away from the figure, so as not to entirely turn our backs on it. And the minute we began moving away from it, it was like the spell was broken on our dog, who began to literally drag us. The figure followed us for more than 5 minutes, maintaining the same distance. It walked with large, slow, deliberate strides, and I remember its arms swung in long arcs as it moved. At no point did it show any sign of aggression. It simply followed, maintaining the same distance from us the entire time. It was perfectly and completely silent. There wasn't a sound when it was following us. We were in a highly adrenalized state during this pursuit, and the atmosphere was extremely tense. We exchanged very few words other than whispers like, "Is it still following us? Don't look at it." It never even crossed our minds to run, which in hindsight seems unusual given neither of us ever entertained the possibility that this was just another person out for a walk. In the moment, we both had almost literally overwhelming sense of wrongness about the situation. After about 5 minutes, I stopped. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, "This is completely insane. What the hell is going on? What the hell is that thing?" When we stopped, it stopped, and again just turned to stand facing us straight on. Because of the lack of features, it may as well have been facing directly away from us, but, like I say, there was a very definite physical sense of when this thing's awareness was focused on you. We stood in total silence. The dog continued to try to drag us away. It stood motionless for a minute or two, and then, as we watched, it turned, sank down into solid ground, and disappeared. Immediately, it felt like some sort of charge in the air had dissipated, and we began to power walk back to the car. When we got back, we were still buzzing with adrenaline and woke everyone up, telling them what we had just seen. Well, that's our story. I can't really add anything else. That wouldn't just be dramatic flourish for the story's telling purpose. The dog's behavior was extremely uncharacteristic of him. If we had encountered another person under the same circumstance, there's no doubt in my mind that he would have been barking and straining on his leash to approach them, rather than get away. That's partly why he was on the lead, but also because he was a rescue and very prone to chasing animals and disappearing for 20 minutes or so. We were both quite shaken, as neither of us could really come up with a plausible explanation for what we had just experienced. Occasionally, over the years, people have suggested this was a broken specter, where our own shadows were being cast by the moon on a fog bank or a low cloud, but I can't accept that explanation. There just wasn't any fog or clouds present, and visibility was excellent due to both clear air and the bright moonlight. I have no real theories about what we saw, nor does my dad. Although I still consider myself a naturally skeptical person, this completely shattered my ability to dismiss other people's stories of high strangeness and wild theories. Even those that at face value seem absurd. I can hardly laugh in someone's face when they say they think that Bigfoot is real but comes from another dimension, for example. Or that something otherworldly is taking people in the wilderness, although obviously I have no reason to believe this was Sasquatch and this incident took place in Scotland. Years after the fact, and years ago now, I found a thread on a bushcraft forum where people were discussing spooky experiences in the outdoors, and to my amazement, There was a hunter who reported seeing the exact same thing crossing a clearing in the woods from a hunting hide during a full moon in America. I don't have the link because this was a long time ago, but they reported identical details. The small head, the long arms that moved in arcs when it walked slow and deliberate. The total blackness and lack of features, and even the fuzzy outline that they described in exact the same way, as if it was vibrating. Make of this what you will. I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything, and I'm not married to any particular theory about what we saw. I just thought it was worth reporting. I realized that the hill was mostly composed of granite and connected that with the water in the lake. I want to briefly touch on two more obvious explanations for what we experienced and why I struggle to accept them. But first, because it's relevant to one of them, let me mention that there are at least some caves on this hill, and they have been associated with spooky stuff before, although I don't know this at the time. In 1836, a group of schoolboys found a small entrance to a previously unknown cave on the hill near where this occurred and contained 17 miniature coffins containing what we would describe today as voodoo dolls, and some of them are still on display in the Scottish National Museum today. Now, for the more rational explanations. We were hallucinating. The dog's strange behavior was caused by something unrelated but in an unfamiliar environment, and the dark we entered some kind of adrenalized state where our minds projected a tangible threat onto an unexpected object, possibly actually one of those tubes used to protect trees I mentioned earlier, and we both hallucinated the same thing. I find this hard to accept because of the specific details we both recall after. Long arms, small head, vibrating outline, slow, deliberate stride, swinging arms, strong sense of when its attention was focused on you. Despite not actually talking about what we were seeing at the time, and also that the dog was very clearly focused on the same thing as we were, and absolutely terrified. Or, it was exactly what it appeared to be. A very unusually tall, black-skinned individual, starved to the point of death and was vibrating. In this scenario, they would have emerged from a hole in the ground, remember the cave, and were shivering from the cold. They then followed us in silence before descending back underground via another hole. I can almost accept this. And that due to the adrenaline, our brains interpreted it to be more dramatically strange than it actually was. The problem with this theory is that it still be really, really weird, but it brings us back into the tangible world of things that actually exist, because although Scotland is something like 98% white, there are still thousands of Scottish people with black skin, and it's possible some of them are very tall. The only thing that's maybe worth adding is that this event seemed to flick some switch in my head that made me no longer remotely afraid of the dark under any circumstances. You'd think it would have gone the other way, and I'm not LARPing as a vampire or some possessed creature of the night. But I worked in a bakery at the time and walked to work along the river in a deep valley in the middle of the night. Sometimes it was pitch black to the extent that you'd have to feel your way ahead with your hands, and I'm not ashamed to admit that sometimes I get a bit spooked, especially when a fox suddenly screams right next to you. After this event, never again. I can walk through the deepest, darkest forest, abandoned building, or mine in complete darkness without feeling the slightest trepidation since this incident, and I don't really know why, but it's to the extent that people have commented on it. I don't know how you can do that. Now, not being afraid of the dark is hardly a superpower, but for me, it has always been a marked, less intimidating experience after this encounter, And I really can't rationalize why, because it seems like it would make so much more sense that it installed fear of the dark rather than removed it. Anyway, that's all I have to say. In the likely event that you've seen the same thing, please let me know. Today's second part of the upload. I'm an avid hunter from northeast Pennsylvania and have been hunting for over a decade. I hunt on the same land every year and am very familiar with how the wildlife reacts in the area. So what occurred to me in the winter of 2019 struck me as very odd. My normal routine before I go out is to check the weather for the day and see where the deer may be for that day. Weather report stated a light drizzle in the early morning with cold temperatures throughout the day. So I decided to set up in my normal deer stand that sat in a 100-yard wide strip of woods between two open fields. Upon arriving, everything was pretty normal. The usual bird and small game noises that I'm used to. Several hours passed by without sighting a deer before it became noon and it was time for me to have lunch. I'd brought my lunch with me and was enjoying it when I noticed that the woods had suddenly gone dead silent. Shortly after noticing this, a fog had rolled in out of nowhere. I thought this was odd, the quiet anyway, and began to think that there was a predator in the area, 'cause that is what I've experienced before. Once when a black bear came by my stand, and another when I saw a bobcat. I began scanning around to see what would have caused this. I should also note that there is not a lot of brush around my stand, so it's very easy for me to spot anything going by. I would say about 3 hours passed by of just dead silence and fog before, just as quickly as it happened, it quickly ended. The woods came back to life and the fog rolled away. The only other thing that struck me as odd during this was what sounded like heavy breathing from behind me and very close, which was impossible because I would have seen whatever was making the noise, but saw nothing. Like I stated before, I've been in these woods a long time and was always comfortable in it. This was the first time I felt uneasy being there and was hesitant to go back. Today's third part of the encounter. The thought of what she saw gives her the creeps even to this day. She says, "I believe in them, Sasquatch." The lady is from Bethel, Alaska. Years ago in the 1990s, she and her younger sister were traveling by snow machine from Bethel, from one of the other tundra villages. The sister was driving the snow machine and she was riding on the back of the sled. It was nighttime and the moon was full and bright, illuminating the frozen tundra. Stars shone in the sky and there was not a cloud in sight. One could see a long way on this night like it was. The lady riding in the sled had begun wearing glasses but took them off because they kept fogging up, so she tucked them away. The two women were about halfway to Bethel when suddenly her sister stopped the snow machine and said, "Look." Her sister was looking at something. She looked in the same direction and saw a person or someone waving its arms from the distance. Thinking that it was her brother, the lady in the sled said to her sister that they should go get him. She didn't say why she thought it was their brother, but no, never, the sister said. She told her to put on her glasses and take another look. And I saw a young peller, a very large, tall person-like creature. Her heart flooded with pain of fright and shock. She yelled to her sister, "Go!" And they went off fast. The lady in the sled was so creeped out that she got a hold of some of the sled rope and wrapped it around her wrist, securing herself just in case. Her spine was crawling from the sight of the Sasquatch-like creature, which began to follow them. "I had the shivers," she states. The creature was much less than a half a mile away from them, and they could see it clearly in the moonlit night. However, from their story, it seemed much closer than what they say. And even as they When at near or full speed, it ran in pace with the snow machine with ease. It was plain to see that it was the young pack, very large. It was running at the same speed as our snow machine. And even when we were going fast, it stayed with us, she said. It seemed to be twice her height, about 10 feet tall, she adds. And when they went downhill, it followed us. It was running. When we would go up, it would go up. But on the third climb up, it was gone, she said. This strange, huge-like creature had run with them for about 10 to 15 minutes before disappearing behind a rise in the tundra. At that point, the sister wanted to stop for some reason, but no, the sister in the sled urged her on to keep going. When the ladies reached Bethel, they went to another sister's home. The older sister told the younger that they should keep the sighting to themselves. I told her that we won't tell anybody, don't talk about it. People will think we are crazy, she said. They won't believe us. Then, out of the blue, right after that night, people were saying that there was a sighting of a Sasquatch, she said. It was even on the radio and everyone was talking about it. My sister and I looked at each other and we thought no one would believe us, she recalled, laughing. Looking back at that night, that creature had posed no threat, she said. It was only following them, but running parallel to their path. It had ran at a pace and distance that was impossible for a human. If I had heard this from someone else, I would have doubted it very much, she says. But now I believe in them. I am glad that we are not the only ones who have seen it. Today's fourth part of the upload. So this took place sometime in the late 2017 near Winter Park, Colorado, at a family friend's cabin. The cabin's in a fairly remote place with a few houses around it. I've been there twice before, but wasn't with my family during this trip as I live in California now. Anyway, my family had spent the day sledding and came back to their cabin in the early evening. My parents and their friends were playing board games downstairs while my 3 siblings and their 2 friends were upstairs playing. At some point, my mom notices that my younger sister isn't playing with the rest of the kids and asks my other sister where she is. She said that she had gone into their room and was going to listen to some music, so my mom thought nothing of it. An hour or so goes by and my mom still hasn't heard or seen my sister, which was unusual as she generally would not pass up time playing with her friends. She again asks my other sister where she was, and she said she was still in the room listening to music. So my mom checks the room to find out that she's not there. Immediately, my mother goes into a panic and starts screaming her name to no response. Everyone in the house starts searching all the rooms, but they can't find her anywhere. My mom then singles out my other sister and asks why she lied about my sister's whereabouts. She claims she had been honest and that she had been listening to music. It's been about 2 hours since anyone had seen my sister. My mom goes outside to see if she can find her. Upon going outside, my mom tells me about the most horrifying thing she has ever seen. My sister was inside of the car with her face plastered to the window, wide-eyed, screaming. My mom said it looked like a horror movie. Everyone had assumed that she had somehow locked herself in the car. I'm not sure how a very intelligent 10-year-old girl locks herself into a car she's been in 1,000 times, but I digress. Upon opening the door to the car and getting my sister out, my mom notices that she's not behaving normally and appears to be in some sort of trance. They walk her inside, begin to ask her questions about what had happened, but she doesn't respond to anything. She remains in this trance state for maybe an hour or two, so my mom puts her to bed. In the morning, my sister appears to be acting somewhat normal, but seemed to be shaken up. My mom then asks how she ended up in the car, but she says she doesn't remember how she got there. She said she only remembered one thing. As she was locked in the car, she saw a man dressed in all black approach her. She said she was terrified and tried to get out of the car. Then the man in black came closer and tells her he will let her out, but she has to do something for him. He holds a black rose up to the window and tells her that he wants her to come out so he can give it to her. After this, my sister remembers nothing. After hearing this story, my mom goes outside to check the area around the car. To her amazement, she sees a trail of footsteps going from the car out past the house into the surrounding forest. No one had been playing or walking around that area before then, according to my mom, so she seemed very confused, disturbed about those tracks. We still don't know what to think of this, but my mother said that the look on my sister's face in the car was sincerely terrifying. Not sure what actually happened that night, but the similarities of seeing a black figure and being in a trance-like state made me see the connection. If I'm not wrong, I believe Colorado is also a hot spot for these cases. Thankfully, my sister didn't become one of them, but maybe she saw something similar to what others do before they disappear. Alright folks, I hope you enjoyed this midnight bonus. Just something to fall asleep to, I guess. With that, thank you for supporting this channel. You guys are the foundation of this platform. Without your support, this channel would be nothing. So thank you once again. Guys, with that, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Please keep an eye on your children, your pets, your loved ones. These creatures are real, and we know that. But our family members and friends might not. And it's up to us to keep them safe. God bless you all.